Welcome back to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast, here with Joey, of course. And today we actually have two guests on the podcast at the same time. We've got Brent Pommerening and Patrick Dunbar. Brent, thank you for joining us, brother.
Hey, good morning. How's it going today? Glad to be here.
Going pretty good. Patrick, thanks again. I love that high-vis hoodie, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us on. Love to have the conversation.
Absolutely. So did I hear you say earlier, whose company is that you're representing, or it used to be somebody's company, Patrick?
This used to be Brent's family business that we got started back when we were 16 years old, running front-end loaders, running the batch plant, and got our feet wet in the ready-mix concrete business.
Okay, so the audience is going to love the fact that you guys are seasoned vets here. Brent, why don't you give us a little bit of your background then?
Well, yeah, we're always kind of in a state of learning. We've been, I guess, doing this for over 30 years already. Patrick and I are lifelong friends. We literally grew up next door to each other. And like you said, we started working together when we were about 16 years old at a company called Valley Concrete, just outside of Chicago, small family business. So really, my career started there, and just through life, worked for a couple vertical companies, including like Prairie Material, Votoran Team Cementos, Cemex for a little bit of time. And now I'm back with a family-owned business, southwest of Chicago, just doing various roles.
Yeah, and Patrick, we can pick it up, 16 years old, Valley Concrete, trying to keep Brent in line, and then where to go from there?
Well, actually, it starts even earlier than that for myself. My dad started in the fly ash business back when I was just a baby. So I got my feet wet on the fly ash side of things. Again, lifelong friends, grew up 4 houses apart. So our families were intertwined, at a very young age. So we played sports and did all that. I grew up in the business from the fly ash side of things, went to the ready mix side of things with Brent and his family. Did that till I was in my early 20s. Then I broke off and got into the construction material side of things, rebar, those kinds of things. So that's where we split.
So explain to me for just a minute, before we get into like why we're here today, I really want to understand when you say your family's in the fly ash business. So what does that look like? I mean, you're not making steel, right? So how are you in the fly ash business? What does a fly ash business look like?
So my father was born and raised in Pennsylvania, came to Illinois, was working for Chevron at the time, and got a phone call from a family friend, said, "Hey, there's a company that needs to dispose of this fly ash," what it's ultimately called fly ash, because they instituted scrubbers on coal-fired power plants back in the early 80s. Company at that time was called American Admixtures. They found a way to dispose of it into concrete ready mix, and the technology was dispose of it at all costs because it was a byproduct, right, of burning coal. And so my dad, through means, bought the company from American Admixtures and started selling fly ash into the concrete ready mix business back in 79 was first year that they were operation, and took it to primarily in the Midwest, but ultimately got to the East Coast, but just taking the fly ash from the coal-fired power plants, distributing that to the local ready mix producers, in the Midwest. So, and then Lafarge in 1990, I think it was 1998, purchased that what was ultimately called American Fly Ash from my father, and they took it on and continued to sell fly ash across the country.
Yeah, it's interesting because the history books. So Joey and I actually went to Middle Tennessee State University and did the concrete degree there. And what I'll just say were the history books that would tell us that in the 70s that the coal-fired power plants were just begging people to take it. If you had a dump truck, you could come and you could have it. And it led to Joey, one of his favorite sayings is you can put darn near anything in concrete and everybody will try and put everything into concrete. Our last guest told us about them putting pig's blood into concrete back in ancient times. And apparently, I don't know who the genius was that thought we're going to use the waste from coal-powered plants and we're going to throw it in concrete. But man, revolutionized the industry. And it sounds like your dad was like right there at the forefront of it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he was right on the forefront of all that. It was, and that's how I ended up in the ready mix side of things. was because of
That's awesome. So we're actually talked to each other recently. Brent, thanks for reaching out. And anybody that wants to be a guest on the Add 10 Gallons Concrete podcast, feel free to reach out through the LinkedIn page on Add 10. You can contact Joey or I directly. I can't say that everybody that reaches out gets to be a guest, but more often than not, it's good people looking to have good conversations about things that are either interesting in the business or challenges or ways to improve. And we kind of have a mix of all three with this conversation. So Brent reached out. You guys started as next door neighbors as kids, and now looks like you're going to be business partners here going forward. You sort of saw a gap, I would say, in the business, and it mostly focuses around supply chain. But instead of me putting words in your mouth, I'd like, Brent, could you take a minute and just talk the audience through what it is that you see as something that can be improved and should be improved so we can sort of update our businesses?
Sure. So we're primarily focused on the supply chain and production in our ready-mix space, the building materials space. Throw asphalt in there too. Really, what's been exciting lately, and I know it's kind of cliche in a sense, but we all talk about it, how the ready-mix industry is typically lagged in adoption of new technologies. And what's been exciting over the past, 5 to 7 years is we've really seen the adoption curve skyrocket, new technologies come to fruition, and through the use of APIs, we're really seeing everybody kind of tying their technologies together, communicating back and forth. So we see some opportunity there. In terms of supply chain, for example, we're seeing a lot of activity there around digital proof of delivery, digitization of tickets. We're going to e-tickets and everything like that, but just that whole supply chain is shifting to, online applications. We talk about customer transparency is a really, really big one that I'm really excited about. We're implementing that right now, where we're going to be putting customer facing applications where they can see pretty much anything about the delivery cycle and into their business insights, from, amounts due, past history, et cetera. But it's really putting that power into the fingertips of the customers. So we're really excited to be a part of that. Patrick and I, really see an opportunity here. He's going to talk about our story, kind of the big aha moment that we had going on about 9 years ago that really got us, our thought process shifting into how can we make this a better supply chain.
So yeah, the story goes, gentlemen, that Brent about a decade ago called me one evening coming home from his job and said, "Hey, we had a major problem today, and we loaded 3 different trucks with 3 different mixes." And I said, "Okay, well, what's the problem?" He goes, "Between the batch man, the truck drivers, the tickets, nobody knew what truck got what load." And Brent said, "So we had to dump 3 loads on the ground." And I said, "Well, that's a lot of money, just being tossed away." And Brent goes, "Yeah, that's a lot of money." And he said, "We got to fix this." That was exactly his words. "We got to fix this. We got to come up with a way of making sure that the right load got on the right truck." And I think we spent better part of an hour talking about that and the blueprint for what ultimately became one of our patents. And subsequently, we had discussed, in previous conversations, we are always very frustrated with remote batch plants. A batch plant that was didn't have enough volume to do a batch man, could probably service as a good revenue stream on its own, but just was very frustrated with that technology at the time. And so we then born the second patent with automation, so to speak. And we laid out the blueprint that night for a better part of 2 years of designing and building our patents. And it all came out of just one single problem of dumping 3 loads of concrete on the ground. I believe at the time it was one was going to a high rise, one was going to a residential foundation, and one was going to a bridge deck. And as you can appreciate, none of those are similar. And if one ends up in the wrong place, the residential guy might like it, but the high rise and the bridge deck guys probably wouldn't enjoy having the wrong concrete. So that's how this was born, was just literally human error, and not malicious, not anything intentional, just as you've been in the ready mix business and you get a strange day where everything is aligned and you just have a bad day, human error takes over. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, if I could just elaborate a little bit on that. Currently, our supply process from the plant to the job site is just based on assumptions. And if you really, really think about it, being comfortable with assumptions on every single load of the day is kind of a dangerous place to be living. So to highlight the story, if you will, we got a call from the job site. It was on the 50-something floor of a high rise. And the customer said, the mix is supposed to have chips in it. So he goes, hey, something's not right here. I don't think I have the right mix. And, if you can, I get worried when things go vertically, right? Because there's so much high performance concrete. All applications are, of course, important, but especially when you go vertical, because the time cycles for a high rise, they're putting another story on the building every 3-4 days. And as we know, most of our designs are 28-day strength. And I know we're developing technology and have ways to have early looks into things, but if you let a mix go for 28 days, you could have 4 stories built above the issue, right? So if you discover that issue 28 days later with a bad break, you can only imagine the dollars that would be spent with engineering and rip and tear possibly, or just liquidated damages could be another solution too. But it was a very sinking feeling. And, it was an aha moment that it's like, we're shipping out millions of cubic yards a year, in the US, and we don't have a digital checkpoint to make sure that the trucks are getting the right loads on them. It does not exist. And we've gone up and down and had conversations with different vendors and so forth. And I think this is a very good opportunity to very much enhance what is assumed to be the digital proof of delivery. And what we see is we want to make sure not only the right truck's getting loaded at the plant, we want to make sure the truck's landing on the right job site. We get in the metropolitan areas, you could have several different projects going on in a block. Or what's even more exciting is, take for instance, at least in our climate, we're doing the big boxes, the 1 million square foot warehouses, where it's not atypical to be pouring inside and outside at the same time. Inside are no air mixes, outside is air and train mixes. And just, unfortunately, sometimes drivers get tunnel vision. They've been inside the last 3 cycles and now they're going outside, and they brought that outside mix inside, and it's who's on first, right? But we see with our smartphones, this is a very powerful thing. And the ability for a customer now with the digital portals that are going out to be able to go up to a truck and scan it, whether it's a QR code, what have you, and say, this is my truck. This is where it's supposed to be. And we can even get to a point where that action actually asks for permission for the drum to be unlocked, for example, which is pretty cool. So it basically, we want to see an environment where you're getting loaded at the plant with the right load and you're arriving on the right job site. There's just no possibility of any interruptions there. That doesn't exist today.
I think we may have spoken about this offline, but it reminds me very much of like an Amazon warehouse pick, pack, and ship. And if anybody's seen those little robots in an Amazon warehouse, then when it gets the notice like, oh, I need to pick up, materials for a bin for delivery, usually with those, it's multiple bins and multiple deliveries, but we'll simplify it here, assuming it was just one basket it needs to collect for a single delivery. It gets that information and goes around to each bay where it needs to collect a certain item. In our case, it could be bays of aggregate and bays of sand and whatever materials, and then brings it into where it needs to be loaded and then put into one shipment and then dispersed. There's no way, there's no reason that what you're describing couldn't be the exact same. And the checkpoints you're describing would be like if FedEx were to say, oh, yep, I got the delivery at my warehouse. Now I need to load it onto a truck and send it, and then the driver drops it off, scans it, says, yep, I dropped off the delivery to the right place, and takes a picture or whatever. That's how they do it. It sounds like you're modernizing concrete batching and delivery to the 21st century.
Well, that's exactly right. And, many would, take the Amazon delivery. You can look at your phone and say, you can see every step of the way, every warehouse, every checkpoint, every step. And how's that accomplished? It's accomplished by scanning a barcode, right? So with today's technology is now, as complicated or simple this may seem or sound, a good technology is one that runs in the background, doesn't require a lot of user intervention, has a good or instant ROI, and is inexpensive to adopt, right? And I think that we can safely say that what we're trying to do is just that. We can solve all of this by putting a transponder in a truck, and some already have them. So like to your point, Paul, like if you back up to the quarry or go to the cement terminal, like that's the origins of all of our raw materials, right? And unfortunately, and it's the reality of the business, is someone out there today is going to put slag in the cement silo. Someone today is going to put a bucket of sand in the stone bin up top. It just happens. I'm guilty of it. I'm not going to call Pat out on it.
Well, I'm guilty. I'm guilty.
But I can guarantee you that we've done it before and it's happening today. And if you think this through, unless you have that panic moment on the end loader, you're like, I just think I put a bucket of sand in the stone bin. Guess what? No one will ever catch this until the strengths are low on the job. It's just a fact of the matter. And we're doing way too much high profile work. Any work, I don't care if it's a patio, you're going to have to go back and tear that out at some point potentially, right? So the question I pose and what we believe strongly can happen is, can we take our raw materials from the source, prove that we've put those on the right trucks, and prove that those trucks got to the plants and put those products in the right bins or silos or whatever, and then follow that through all the way to the job site through true digital proof of delivery and true digital transparency with no assumptions in between. That's what we'd like to see.
Well, if this upgrade takes place in a ready-mix plant, Joey Bell will never be able to manage a ready-mix plant. Let me tell you why. So because you're going to make everything look like Amazon, he's already has heartburn 7 days a week from all the deliveries his wife gets and having to track all that nonsense. Now he's going to have to do it at work too. I don't think he'll survive. I really don't.
Yeah, that's very true. Amazon frequents our house a lot too. And just to highlight another thing too, is we have all these interconnected systems, right, that rely on making sure, for instance, the right loads in a drum. We talk about some of the technologies that have drum sensors now, right? Maturity meters on the job sites. Great technology, tons of potential. I think it's awesome to be able to maintain real-time water cement ratio, temper the loads with super PEEP, for example, on the way to job. It's going to make everybody's lives a lot easier. But the only caveat I see is that we need to make sure that we've got it right before we can start doing those types of things, right? We talk about EPDs as well. There's another area that could rely on making sure that we're putting the right things on the right trucks and following through with those materials so that we can prove it out to the end user that everything's copacetic at the end.
I don't know if we want this to turn into an EPD conversation.
We'll stop it there.
Different thoughts. That's a different podcast. Oh, yeah, I just saw you drinking that Duke mug again. Do we need to talk about, real quick, do we need to talk about March Madness? I mean, you guys dominated this past weekend. And by the way, we're recording this interview on March 24th. So we just finished the first weekend of March Madness, and Duke pretty much destroyed the team they were playing on Sunday.
Yeah, as long as complacency can find itself in anything, everybody gets vulnerable to a certain point. But I mean, honestly, there's a lot of good teams left, a lot of good competition left, and you just never know who's going to show up on any given day. But they're looking pretty good out there.
I saw a stat this morning, Joey, speaking of people's fandoms, and everybody that's listening to this knows that you're a fan of the Tennessee Volunteers, and they are playing Kentucky in the Sweet 16 coming up this weekend. It is the first time. Although you've played Kentucky 135 times, it is the very first time in 100 years that you've played them in the NCAA tournament in any round.
No kidding.
Yeah, no idea how that stat's even real.
I honestly didn't even know that Tennessee was in the March Madness thing. I watch zero basketball, so this is all this is all news to me.
Well, you guys had a couple of down years. You stole Auburn's coach, and now you are good again. Or sorry, Auburn got Bruce Pearl. They're good again, and then you guys are now back, and you're
looking good.
Well, good for us.
What about you, Patrick? You're not a Duke fan, are you?
No, Bradley Brave, through and through. Don't get a chance to really get to the NCAA tournament too often, but when we do, it's a pretty special time for us. It's great competition. Love seeing all the games. My son's really into it with a bunch of kids from the neighborhood. And just love watching them get excited about it, every time we get a chance to watch a game.
That's cool. How old's your son?
He's 10. Brent.
Man,
Brent,
that was prime
I was going to say, but yeah, I was going to say, and Brent named one of his kids after that.
I got a Drake and I got a Duke. Drake got knocked out, unfortunately, but Duke, yeah, we're still here.
Next, you'll have a Creighton, and we'll see who from there. Normally, when they have these podcasts, the idea is never to make this thing an hour-long infomercial. So I just want the people to know that, like, we are here at the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast, really fascinated with technology. It just so happens that you guys saw a gap and created a business and patents to go along with that, to fill in with a technology. But when I look at the ready mix adopting any new technology, my God, it's like pulling teeth. And when you work in the business, you understand why. It's making wholesale changes can be very, very difficult. Live in a litigious environment. Live in an environment with workers that maybe aren't always computer savvy. So as you are going forth on this venture, and you guys are from the business, what do you think it's going to take to get our people to really level up on the technology side to lead into more of this automated? Patrick, go ahead. What do you think it's going to take to get us to automate things the way we're describing here?
Well, I think, and Brent will agree with this, I think we're on that precipice right here, right now. You're going to see a big transformation in the workforce play out in the next 5 years, with a lot of people retiring in the business. I mean, we've all heard the stories of people. The age of our business is getting very old, right? And the retirement age is fast approaching, the last, let's call it the older crowd, because we had that recession, 2010, 11, 12, where a lot of people exited the business, and people that were of senior positions got to stay on, and everybody else got to, unfortunately leave the business. And so I think what's going to happen is two things. One is you're going to see an exodus of that older population, and you're going to see the newer, younger generation. And I kind of see Brent and myself on that precipice of the younger crowd. And going to the technology, I think what is exciting to myself and to Brent is that, especially at the batch plant, your best batch man is usually your eldest or your most senior guy, right? He's been there, he's done it thousands of times, if not millions of times. Our technology allows us, any producer, to make your best batch man from your worst batch man. Meaning, I could take Joey, I could take Paul, I could probably sit you down at a batch plant, and you could put out just as much concrete from that ready mix plant that your most senior batch man can ever put out, hands down, with our technology. So I think that's the first thing that is going to happen. And I think the second thing that's going to happen is you're going to see, just because of the aging population, and the problem is just we don't have enough people to fill all these positions. We just don't. And maybe there will come. I don't know. I can't answer that. But I think if you can take 2 or 3 positions out of the equation in a ready mix business, who wouldn't, right? Again, not enough people to fill the positions, but also the ROI of just saying, hey, if I implement this into my ready mix business, I can eliminate 2 or 3 positions, and that will ultimately pay for it. So I think that's in the microcosm of where we're right on that cusp, right here, right now, along with other things like the electronic proof of delivery, which I know we don't want to get into, and all these things are really at the forefront of a lot of people's technology forefront in their face. This is just a way of completing what we call the triangle between the batch plant.
If you go into a modern batch plant today, it looks like a NASA command center with all the screens and stuff. But you go into some of those old school batch plants, and they could be. And by the way, an old school batch plant does not mean that it's a low volume or a satellite plant. I mean, they could be a good sized plant, but running on guys with 2 phones, one on each shoulder, and sticking magnets on a magnet board saying, this truck's in the yard, this truck just got loaded, this truck is now on the way to the job site. And that's how they're tracking things. And man, and that same person, by the way, is fielding phone calls like, oh, you need 8 yards at 3 p.m. today. Sorry. He's looking at his magnet book. All my trucks are committed. I can get you in on Thursday. So we're seeing some wild stuff. Does this sort of upgrading that we're talking about here with the proof of delivery, are you seeing this you guys are going to have to upgrade their batch plants to sort of fit into this? Are you seeing that this is all going to be on an app? Like, how do you envision this rolling out and people actually interfacing with it?
I can take that one. So it's got to be simple. It's got to be something that doesn't add to the NASA command center, right? Probably one of our priorities, well, it is one of our priorities, is, eliminating human redundancies, right? Like when you're picking up the phones and you're talking to this person about directions or this or that, like we live in these buckets and there's buckets of time. And when time passes or time expires, like there's no such thing as getting that time back in the ready mix industry. It's irrecoverable, right? So to answer your question, this technology runs in the background and it almost feeds itself, if you will. And the way we do this is, again, just by putting these transponders in the trucks and just making these plants smart, really smart, intelligent, because Patrick talks about this triangle, and I want to kind of expand on the triangle. So we got the 3 points of the triangle is dispatch, right? And that's where all the information is housed about all of our orders, all of our trucks, and everything that we got to accomplish in real time throughout the day. So when a dispatcher is looking at the dispatch screen, they know in their mind exactly what load is next to go out the door, right? And this is just a constant evolving state. We all know it's organized chaos, but like if I'm sitting in front of the dispatch screen right now and I'm waiting for a truck to get in the yard, I already know what load this truck's going to get. Yes, there's pre-ticketing where you can go ahead and pre-ticket, but our whole point here is to eliminate the clicking and dragging and this and that. Just streamline that. And then we get over to the batch plant. So the batch plant, so if you're remote or central dispatch, what have you, but the batch operator is waiting for the receipt of that batch information for the next load, right? They got to sit there and wait for it to appear on their screen. They're literally sitting there waiting for it. And then the truck, same thing. The truck is either waiting to be sequenced or called out or what have you. So we got all these inefficient things happening, right? $2 a minute. Right? We can make a safe assumption across the United States that the average cost of a truck and driver pair operates at $2 a minute, right? But what's interesting about this plant efficiency conversations, not only we got the truck driver pair, we got the dispatcher, we got a plant operator, we got a loader operator. So it quickly gets magnified on just how much the cost of a minute is, right? without getting super granular on our technology, we have KPIs, right? We have what I say is all the low-hanging fruit is picked. Like, from clock in to first ticket, how long does that take? We know that. How long does it take for Johnny to wash down? We know it's 8 minutes, right? But what we don't understand is kind of these hidden KPIs. And it's almost like a gold mine in a sense, is from when a truck arrives at the plant from a previous load, if a load is available for that truck, how long does it take for a dispatcher to ticket that truck, right? We don't talk about that. It's just not a discussion point. And I can guarantee you it's at least a minute or two or what have you on every single load at $2 a minute. So then when the dispatcher does assign that truck a load, now it goes to the batch panel, right? And it just depends on the type of operation, but more times than not, that load's not going to get weighed up till the batch plant operator has eyes on that truck, right? And the weigh process takes some time. So there's another unidentified KPI is how long does the load sit in the load index when that plant is available to load it up? So there's a few free minutes right there at $2 a minute times how many employees you want to apply to this situation. Well, quick math, even just on a single truck, if you're saving $10 on that load, that's over $1 a yard in savings just there. So kind of moving back, there's no reason when a truck, especially with the advent of optimization, what I call 2.0, with AI and injecting all these things, we see an ecosystem at some point when a truck it comes into the yard, it's going to assign itself the best case load for itself. And then we proceed to this point at the plant. If we have a drive-through plant, it's very easy to visualize, but it's a checkpoint right before you enter, and that truck gets scanned by an RFID reader, and it says, hey, if this plant's available to weigh up my stuff, weigh it up automatically with no delay, right? You talk about Amazon. This case, we shift to talking about an automatic car wash is probably the finest example I can think of. today's modern car washes aren't just the car washes where you have one vehicle in there and the thing goes around. It's a long 60, 70, 80-foot tunnel, right? And if you really think about the process, when you pull up to the car wash, it's going to scan your car. It's going to know exactly what wash package you have. It's going to raise the arm, right? That's your digital proof of making sure you're getting the right car wash on the right truck. But what happens when you pull in? This is very important to understand. I know we're speaking to a broad audience, but what happens when you pull into the car wash, you're going to get your pre-wash. And as you move down, you're going to get then your soap and then your tires and all these things. But what happens behind you is a vehicle in your rear view mirror is on your bumper. So as soon as the vehicle is done with the pre-wash, that next car is getting the pre-wash. And then all of a sudden you got 3 cars in the same tunnel, right? There's no wasted seconds in that process. Applying this to the ready mix. So if we have a truck that's loading under the plant and we have another truck in the staging area that's scanned, it has a load available. As soon as that cement scale is empty, boom, I'm going to weigh up that cement or the add mixtures or any of the other things. If anything is free at any given moment, it's prepping it for the next load. You have 0 seconds wasted. And that's what we're looking to do in that ecosystem.
All right. So what Brent speaks of is, what we call the staging area is one of our patents. That goes to, the plant is ready to load the next truck, right? So the truck that comes out of the staging area drives underneath the plant. And once the truck is positioned, boots down, we're ready to, go. A batch man can just hit discharge now, right? But in this, right before this sequence happens, right as he hits the discharge button, this is where we get into, and I know we don't want to talk about electronic proof of delivery, but this is where we see the gap in the electronic proof of delivery. Right as he hits the discharge button, that truck is scanned to make sure that the correct truck is under the plant at the point of discharge. Meaning if truck 1 is supposed to be under the plant, we make sure right then and there that truck 1 is under the plant and not truck 2 or truck 3 or truck 35. And we do that by just, again, scanning the truck. And if that truck 1, which is supposed to get the constituents of the batch, is under the plant continues the discharge process and we go about business like nothing happened, right? For some reason, trucks get out of sequence, somebody pulls under, somebody's not paying attention, and let's say truck 35 somehow sneaks in and it's scanned at the point of discharge, right? The plant's automatically stopped. The batch man is notified, hey, truck 35 just got under the plant somehow. What's going on? Truck 1 is supposed to be under the plant. And that's where this whole electronic proof of delivery really, for us, falls apart as far as actually, this electronic proof of delivery is not fortified because we don't know for 110% that the right load got put on the right truck. The assumption is that the right load got put on the right truck, but it's just that. It's an assumption. And without the actual truck being scanned at the point of discharge, there will never be a true electronic proof of delivery, in our opinion. Because any truck can, again, this goes back to the original concept 10 years ago. We had 3 different loads put on 3 different trucks. We don't know who, what, where, when, how that was sequenced. We don't know whose ticket belonged to who. That's where the chaos starts. That's where you're dumping 3 loads on the ground. That's where the problem really lies.
Brent, when you were talking about how it's kind of like a car wash and the truck goes in, truck gets scanned, it gets its quote unquote package. In this case, it'd be the mix, mix design, mix number. I envisioned in my head, and the way y'all are describing it's still like a conventional plant. Trucks backing in, getting loaded all at one time, and then pulling out. Almost when you said car wash, I was kind of envisioning in my head almost like a tunnel that goes under the ag bins and the cement bin. So, okay, truck gets scanned. This is the truck number. This is the mix design it's going to be getting. It pulls under first stop, water / coarse aggregate. Boom, gets that. Pulls up another few feet, gets it sand. pulls up another few feet, gets sand, gets cement, fly ash, what cementitious, pulls up another one, gets its tail water and admixes, whatever else goes in, and then it's out the door. Meanwhile, like you said before, that truck is on its bumper, is getting another whole different mix. That's kind of what I was envisioning in my head when you guys were talking. Now, I know it's not a thing, I guess, but that seems like it would almost be like super extra productive than waiting on a truck to back up under the plant, get loaded, and then get out of there.
I imagined the same thing actually earlier when you were first talking, and then you mentioned the drive-through plants, and it stuck with me. You guys are Chicago guys. I can't remember if it's yard 32 or yard 33. Prairie Materials, like the absolute monstrous
32.
32. Thank you.
32.
Absolutely huge. Dual drive-through coming out of a central mix point. That thing is just humming day and night, and so maybe the central mix instead of a dry batch with a central, that may not work as well. But that's the one I'm thinking of constantly and trying to implement on that. So you're streamlining, not just is the mix going in the right truck, but we'd be streamlining which trucks even need to be on the yard. Because if you haven't been there, it's a tiny yard. It's unbelievably how small the footprint of that property is, but it's cranking out 1 million yards a year.
I can take that one specifically. So what's interesting about that plant is dual lane wet batch. I guess maybe I'll go back. We just talked about all these things, okay? But to your point, Paul, it doesn't change the physical process for a dispatcher or a plant operator. All these sensing devices, this is all just running in the background. So like when a truck pulls in the yard, it's geofenced, right? So dispatcher in its traditional form can just print the ticket. So now that's sitting in a load queue, but when the truck advances to staging area, it's going to say, I'm here, I'm ready to load. Is there a load for me? There is. Boom, it's going to weigh up. So this isn't more button pushing, nothing like that. It allows dispatchers and plant operators to manage their exceptions. Like, we're not dealing with clicking and dragging anymore. But to your point about yard 32, that plant is twin central mix, but there can be 3 loads on each side at any given time. There's a holding hopper, there's a central mixer, and then there's a load weight up on the scales at any given time. So if you put this there, this is the perfect situation for that, because you at yard 32, I mean, they're putting out many yards a day. I'll just leave it at that, just not to get specific with them because I used to work there. But it's one of the highest production plants around, and they rely on full capacity at times. So, getting this zero gap between loads situation going there, this could just run. As long as you're feeding that batch panel load assignments, as long as you're staying ahead of that curve, it's just going to eat. And same thing, like, to your point, guys, with the dry batch situation, it is interesting to consider multiple kind of like a car wash tunnel where you're getting each of your constituents separately. That's not a bad idea, and that would just involve some different plant designs. This is also designed to work with traditional dry batch systems as well. I can say that I know one of the first thing that, once your admixture is going to the sand or into the water tank, we can weigh up the admixtures for the next load, and the cement scale will empty out first before the aggregate, so we can weigh up the cement scale. Those are the timely things. Those are things that take time. So when that next truck is backed under the plant, right, it's ready to go. And a dry batch plant, this is what's interesting is we talk about theoretical values, right? This plant theoretically can put out 200 yards an hour. Well, why does it have to be theoretical? Why can't we make it actual? And the reason why it's theoretical is because we don't load with complete efficiency. It's not the plant's fault. It's just we're not feeding it quick enough. We're not taking advantage of the seconds that are available to us. And once those seconds pass, they're gone. It's not like we can go faster on the next load, right? So that's really, really the thing. But you hit it on the yard. That this is for high production. This is for low production. This is for remote. But you put this downtown yard 32, it's like a Ferrari at that point.
Just to circle back here. So we talk again, how is this going to get implemented? What's the next thing? Again, I go back to it every time. Your worst batch man in the company, and I don't care where you are with our technology, just became your best batch man as far as production per hour. Because again, we've eliminated all of the human problems or inefficiencies in the system. We have taken the human element out of the batch plant. in essence. Again, going back to the car wash, we can stack those trucks up bumper to bumper, or if going back to the, back under batch plant, the still same applies. If the truck, is, we call it the staging area. If the truck is scanned at the staging area, it just says, hey, batch plant, once you are done loading that truck and any of the constituents are empty on the batch plant, start weighing up the next load. And then once that truck that is currently under the plant pulls out, the next truck just backs under and boom, you're starting all over again. And I've been out of the business for 20 years now. And I always joke with Brent that, probably give me our technology in 30 minutes at a batch plant, and I could probably run circles around their best batch man currently, just with our technology, with the technology that we have versus the technology that they currently have. That's how inefficient the system currently is. And I think that's how we can adopt this. We just need somebody to take the bull by the horns and actually take this and do it.
I think one market where this would excel at is the paving market, because I come from a paving background where, we had those central mix plants and we were cranking out 300 yards an hour just as is. And I have heard, I've never ran one, but you put a shrink drum on one of those plants and you just increase your production. I forget how much more it increases its production. But then another thing about the paving side of things, where you're running the exact same mix all day long, and pretty much the only thing that's hanging you up are, equipment or the human aspect of the day-to-day operations. I think if you could automate that a little more and have the right mix, put some active gel in that paving mix and make it a little more fluid, and have that paver just ripping down the runway and, laying 18-inch concrete down, I think that would be phenomenal. That may be something you guys ought to look at, because that's what came to mind when, time is money and you're trying to put as much concrete out the door as you absolutely possibly can, because instead of working 16-hour days, you would rather be working a 12-hour day. And, that can probably be possible if you had the right automation in there.
I thought about two other aspects of all this RFID technology on the trucks and making sure the right muds get in the right place. I got two security questions and then a comment about something else you made. So the security question, or security, not a question, but a comment, was that like for these satellite plants, you mentioned that earlier, and taking any of the guesswork out of like, did the right truck get the right load in the right place? And that's going to add on to something that Tim Hertak said one time. And Tim is Sylvie Concrete. I respect him as much as any quality guy I've ever met. And he was one of the very early adopters of the hatch, like the Sika hatch that they're putting on his trucks to monitor loads. And for him, it was about being able to do more with less, and the security of knowing that from his command station, he could see how that concrete looked in transit. When it was at a job site that was an hour away from maybe his primary site, he's only got so many QC techs, and that he needed those guys on the main jobs downtown. But it didn't mean he didn't care about the quality of what was being built an hour outside of downtown Philadelphia. And so for him, he could see it. And if he saw a problem or someone said a problem, he'd go back and look and say, well, when that was driving, that drum was spinning too slow. You just need to spin it some more on the site and it'll get back into shape. Or he could see that the air was low or high. And so as the truck's driving, he's troubleshooting before it even gets there, because he's getting red flags on his computer system. So this is another way to upgrade the performance of these satellite plants and these job sites that are a bit further away from where maybe your QC guys are currently stationed, so you don't lose a day of efficiency from your quality team. A second way that I think it enhances security is you're talking about potentially the guy who's receiving the load at the point of delivery. Or you mentioned that maybe an Amazon job where guys going in and out. A lot of times the person who's receiving that mud is the pump operator. I'm thinking about some of the Amazon jobs we've been on, and it's 2:00 in the morning or wherever, and he's pumping as fast as he can. He's trying to lay 80 yards an hour on the deck up top minimal. He'd love to be at 120 if he could handle it. When that truck pulls up, he's not asking, is this my truck? He's not asking that. He's get it in the hopper. We need 2 chutes down at a time. Let's go. Trying to get that up to. But if that truck pulled up, and it'd be the same for a downtown high rise, that guy operating that massive pump at the bottom's not, he's not asking where's this, where's that. If he can scan it real quick, and the pump guy knows, yeah, this is a load, this is a truck I'm supposed to have, that'd be good. And then my last comment, I know I hit you with a lot, but my last comment is, man, if you ever had 3 trucks mixed up and the mixes were that different, why don't you just pour them on the ground? I guarantee you that 14,000 PSI SEC mix look different than your footer. That's my only concern. I think I would have dumped a bit on the ground and checked them first. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Brent.
Yeah. No, I mean, those are all very valid points. And I guess if we start with the drum sensing technology, they're mobile QC stations, right? You're exactly right. When configured, we're going to be able to, temperature, slump, air entrainment. I know that one we're working on, but we'll get there eventually. But I guess to your point, hey, this load's got low air, right? Well, why does it have low air? Is it the right mix? That's the first question I have, right? And it kind of all ties together. But now we have the confidence that we can let those systems just eat and do their job, knowing full well that's what's behind you. And that drum, you don't have to worry about it because it is correct. Now we can adjust and temper in real time. So the remote operations, this allows not only for the efficiency from the production standpoint that we talked about, but also from a quality standpoint. We're good, right? In terms of arriving on the job site, you're right, because a lot of times we've seen this before. It's like, oh, there's a concrete truck. It must be mine. I'm waving at it and you're driving like, okay, I guess this is where I'm going. And then no questions are asked. But let's talk about high rises real quick. It's traditional to have what we used to call sequence pours. So we'd have 99 yards of 4,000, then 18 yards of 15,000. And then we go right, and it'd be all these, because we're puddling along the columns, and it has to be like this very specific sequence of events, right? And all these trucks are going to the same pump. So if these trucks not only get out of sequence at the plant, let's assume they had it right at the plant, but if they arrive out of sequence on the job site at the pump, you don't want to sneak that load of 8,000 PSI between the 14. The pump would just say, no, it's not right. There's all this intelligence that can evolve. And I think the more we think about the potential here, just circling full back, is that triangle we talked about. The plant does not talk to the truck. They don't communicate electronically amongst each other, right? They don't talk, which is kind of strange. The trucks talk to dispatch software, and the batch software talks to the dispatch software, but the trucks and plants don't really have a good digital relationship. And now, once that relationship's established, now we can have the trucks talking to job sites and contractors, and the whole feedback loop is there. Because if I'm the project owner, if I own this $2 billion high rise, I don't care about any of this stuff. I just want to make sure that the products that I ordered for this job are going to meet the specifications that I spent, $100 million on. That's all I care about. Make it happen. And I'm assuming, I use the word assume, that most of these project owners don't even realize this, or the DOTs or anybody in between. They don't really realize the amount of assumptions that take place. This solves that.
I think Patrick was trying to interrupt me earlier as I went on my diatribe.
Oh, no, Brent nailed it on the head. Your first comment was, what the guy from Tim, you said from Sylvie, I think it was, that's again, the mother of all assumptions, right? He's wondering, why is it low on air? Why is it this? Why is it that? Well, it could be just the simple fact that he has the wrong load that he is trying to temper. And, again, it's not malicious. It's not intentional, but did the right load get put on the right truck? And all these other systems, again, to Brent's point, all these other systems work in harmony with everything that we're doing, as long as we know that the right load is on the right truck. I think that's where this all really has to go back to, is making sure that the right load got put on the right truck.
I love it. I know our audience will forgive us this one time for talking about a singular technology for so long, but it really has transformative capabilities, and it's very exciting. Really glad to learn about it directly from you guys, the inventors of this. I think it's just absolutely fascinating. Joey, do you have anything else for them before we let them get back to their real jobs?
No, I can't think of anything. Brent, Patrick, it's been such a pleasure talking to you guys. I learned a lot, and I'm excited to see what you guys do in the future for batching.
Well, we appreciate it. And again, we just want to see the industry continue moving forward and embracing new technologies. We're a fan of all this stuff that's going on. So it's good to be a part of the initiative, and we just hope we can contribute our little piece to it eventually. So thank you.
Great. And Joey will put all your contact information in the show notes. So if anybody wants to reach out and learn more about what you're doing, they'll be able to do that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have completed another episode of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete podcast. Thank you for listening along with us.